Your problem isn't that you have a drug problem. That is a symptom of your problem. Your problem isn't that you overeat. That's a symptom. Your problem isn't that you have ADD and you're always looking for excitement. That is a symptom of your problem. Your problem is that you don't know Christ as your personal Savior. If you know Jesus, the Apostle Paul says, I can be content anywhere. I can be content in any situation. Paul goes on to list the shipwrecks, everything he had, being beaten, found himself in prison unwarranted. Everything that I went through, being homesick, losing my family, probably losing his wife because he was a believer. The Apostle Paul could look at this and say, I lost everything this world has, everything that this man thought was valuable, but I have found the secret. I have found contentment in everything, and that is Jesus. There is a contentment that is beyond anything this world can give you. Get saved. Come to know Christ as your personal Savior. Then get serious about Jesus. There's a story of a great hymn. And the story starts with a young boy named John. And John was raised by a very devout, believing mom. But his mom died when he was 7. John had a hard time reconciling how a good and loving God would take his good mom who loved him. And John didn't have much of a father, so John kind of went off on his own. And John decided when he was young that he was going to make something of his life, and he wanted to be rich, and he wanted to have money. He tried being in the Navy, and that didn't quite work out, and he had a horrible story that went with that in the English Navy, and it didn't work out. And he found himself being basically lower than slaves, and an opportunity arose for this young guy named John to start being a sailor and a merchant, sort of like a merchant marine, and he started working his way up in it. Well, John was loved by a woman named Mary, and Mary never let John walk away. And Mary loved Jesus, and she loved John, and she kept praying for John, and she knew God had something special with John. She knew John had to come to know Christ. Well, John eventually worked his way up a ship, and he found himself the captain of his own slave ship. He was making money. He had a lot of money in his hand. He had all the power. He had the power of life and death over people. And in the midst of a great storm where he thought he was going to go down, he told God, if you get me out of this, I will finally surrender. I will finally come to know you. And the storm passed. And John, true to his word, and Mary praying for him all those times, John came to know Christ as his personal Savior. John still was a slave runner for a period of time. But after a while, that worked on John's heart, and he realized the sin of what it was. So John and a guy named William Wilberforce worked tirelessly in England to outlaw the slave trade and outlaw English ships being involved in the slave trade. John married Mary. John became a preacher. John became a pastor. And at his older age, Mary died. John was known to write hymns. And the story goes that this once man who was far from God, who hated God, who had a bitter heart towards God, who was evil towards his fellow man, who came to know Christ and had everything changed and stopped seeking money and started seeking Jesus. That just like when his mom died, he became bitter. When Mary died, because he had Jesus, he became sweeter. And it was for Mary's funeral that John started to write the words that John Newton wrote. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. When you go further through the hymn, you know one of the stanza is, through many toils and tears. He's making reference to the ship reference there. He's making reference to losing his mother. He's making reference to losing his Mary. But through it all, John realized materialism, bitterness, is nothing compared to what Jesus offers. Amazing grace that God would give us something that we don't deserve. The meaning and purpose of life is Jesus. With every head bowed.